This is TJR's Classic Rock Corner podcast with your host, the Classic Rock Brainiac, yours truly, Terrence. Sit back and listen to me gush over albums that I love that either had an impact on my life or rock and roll in general, and be rest assured that there's no country or rap nonsense to be found here. So welcome to another exciting episode of TJR's Classic Rock Corner podcast. Welcome back, my friends, to the podcast that never ends. We're so glad I could attend. Come inside, come inside. It's the Classic Rock Brainiac, Terrence Reardon, TJR, here on TJR's Classic Rock Corner podcast. A show that's gaining a lot of new viewers, subscribers, listeners, you name it. It's getting them on audio and on visual. Here on YouTube, I'm now taking donations on PayPal and also on Patreon. You know why? Because I want to get the show's notoriety and exposure all over the place. So it costs money now to run the darn thing, and I'm trying to do the best I can on a pauper's budget. A pauper's budget as I kick some glass over. But still, to get the show going and keeping it going, a lot of hard work. And today on this fine show is a old but new episode. I say old but new because parts of it I had to re-record, A, and B, a 40th anniversary edition of this album has just been released in every country bar the United States, which hopefully will be released in the United States hopefully by the end of the year. And it's by a British band who is named after the band's financial situation when they first got together back in 1977. The band, Dire Straits, and the album, Brothers in Arms. Yeah, obvious choice, I know, but there's an emotional attachment to this album. So it's pretty much most of the original review, but I had to re-record sections. In one part, I had to re-record the rant and rave about one of the verses on the big hit on this album, in this politically correct world we live in. And be warned, I do my old preaching off the pulpit segment, which I know some people love me preaching off the pulpit. And I will do that, talking about money for nothing. Nothing negative, mind you, but one of the verses, which is now seen as taboo because of some community type of hors d'oeuvre political correctness. I will discuss that. Plus the 40th anniversary edition that's been released since this original review was recorded several years ago. My opinion on the album still stands as always, still a masterpiece. And part of this intro I'm re-recording to bring things up to speed because I think I goofed up on the original. Oh yeah, because it was the old version of the show was Terrence Reardon and Friends episode back in 2020, 2021. And I had to remove that reference and another album of theirs that I recorded a review of, which I then re-recorded again. Now I have to re-record the intro for that one, which will be re-airing in the not-too-distant future. That being the album before Brothers in Arms, Love Over Gold. But be forewarned that I will be talking about everything to do with Dire Straits and everything to do with the Brothers in Arms album on this episode. So let's dig into the festivities, shall we? I think we should do so. Dire Straits' Brothers in Arms was the band's 5th studio album, their 7th overall release, released in May 1985 here in the good old US of A, and it was also released on here in the good old US of A on Warner Brothers, while the rest of the world it was Vertigo, which was a phonogram label, Universal Music now, but here in the States it was Warner Brothers, the home of Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck. And this was the band's first studio album in over 2.5 years, since the underappreciated 1982 classic Love Over Gold, which is my favorite Dire Straits album, by the way. And yeah, I have a review on that, which I will air, or shall I say re-air, in the not-too-distant future. But since that album was released, the band put out an EP, Twisting by the Pool, which I also cover on the Love Over Gold thing that I will talk about in the future. You'll hear more about it in the future. And Alchemy, the live album. So by then, Dire Straits was down to 2 original members, singer, songwriter, guitarist extraordinaire Mark Knopfler, and bass player, harmony singer John Illsley. And then Alan Clark had been in the band since 1980. When he joined as a keyboard player, he didn't replace anybody. I mean, yeah, he filled in for Roy Bittan did the Making Movies album, but Alan Clark did the tour because Roy Bittan had commitments with Bruce Springsteen. And also, let's see, those 3 from Love Over Gold remained, but there was a new drummer, Terry Williams, who previously played with the likes of, what's that band there? Oh yeah, Rockpile, and with Dave Edmunds. And up until then, he played on Meatloaf's 1981-82 tour in support of the Dead Ringer album. And then you had also him on drums, plus you had a couple of new recruits on this album. Guitarist Hal Linds, who joined in 1980, was now out of the band to be replaced by the now deceased Jack Sonny, who we dedicate this review to his respectful memory of. He joined for the Brothers in Arms towards the end of the recording and did the tour. And he's on the Live in San Antonio disc that's part of the 40th Anniversary Edition. And he's now on guitar. He was yet another American to join the Dire Straits ranks. On guitars, backing vocals. And then, of course, the other new recruit, keyboard player, synthesizer whiz kid, Guy Fletcher, who up until then just did work with Mark Knopfler on some soundtracks. And he also did some work with Roxy Music on their tour in support of their swan song, Avalon, in 1982. And he did the subsequent tour, which he played synthesizers on the Avalon tour, which was documented on the Long Road EP, in the full-fledged double live album, Heart Still Beating. Excellent live album if you're a fan of Roxy Music. And yeah, I think that live album is amazing. That has the best version of Out of the Blue on there, with Phil Manzanera going batshit on the guitars. So that's the band that comprised on the Brothers in Arms album. And the recording of it took place in late 1984, early 1980. The band went to Montserrat in the West Indies to Air Studios, which sadly was destroyed by Hurricane Hugo in 1989 after the Rolling Stones recorded Steel Wheels at that same studio, owned by the Beatles' George Martin. And Brothers in Arms was once again produced by Mark Knopfler, and again, engineering was Neil Dorfsman, who engineered the previous studio album, Love Over Gold. And the album was, was excruciating to make. It took 5 months to do, between October of 84 and February of 85, and there was some problems during the recording. For instance, Terry Williams was not getting the feel that producer Neil Dorfsman was seeking in the songs. So, turns out, Terry Williams was not hardly on the album at all. He only plays the intro on one track, then he plays all the drums on one other song. And the songs I'll reveal when I get to them. But this album was, like I said, took a while to record, and was also one of the first albums to utilize a complete digital recording in the world of rock and roll. I mean, Christopher Cross recorded his debut album on digital tape machines, but Dire Straits completely did digital with this album. Digitally recorded, digitally mixed, digitally mastered, because Mark Knopfler was always looking for better sound quality with new toys that were being developed in the recording domain. And the album, like I said, was Mark Knopfler trying out digital, and engineer co-producer Neil Dorfman decided to replace Terry Williams early in the sessions with Sting drummer Omar Hakim. Of course, Omar Hakim played drums on Sting's 1985 solo debut, The Dream of the Blue Turtles, which was recorded at that same studio. Talk about the irony. And Sting also had something to do with this album as well. And there was a couple other songs where John Illsley did not play on either. One was, I'll tell you which ones he didn't play on. And no, I'm not using Wikipedia to tell you the songs because I can spot the tone of the bass players at 100 paces and then some by just their technique. And this album, like I said, was recorded over 5 months, and it was mixed at the Power Station in New York, once again by Neil Dorfman, and the assistant engineer in New York were Bruce Lamkoff and David Greenberg, and helping out on the recording was Steve Jackson. And the album was then mastered in 2 different places. The Sound Clinic in London by John Dent, and then mastered at Masterdisc by the one and only Bob Ludwig. And the vinyl version was done by Bob Ludwig, and then the CD and the cassette was done by John Dent. Interesting because I had the, I'll tell you why when I talk about the songs, because I had the cassette when it came out. Because my introduction to this album was, I think, seeing the video for Walk of Life on MTV, pre-Money for Nothing, because Money for Nothing was out as just released as a single at that stage. Walk of Life had been released prior to that here in the States, and it was with the first video of the band rehearsing the song on stage in Israel, shot in April of '85 for Old Grey Whistle Test in the UK, and also footage of a guy in a tunnel in London, a busker, playing the guitar that's featured on the front cover and the back cover of the album, the National Steel acoustic guitar, which kind of sounds like a banjo, and it's usually used for dobro purposes, but sort of just an amazing album cover. And I first got this album in July 1985 at an old record store called Side One, which is a long-defunct record store chain that used to exist up here in the Northeast, here in Massachusetts. It was at the location in Weymouth. And I remember my mom taking me there because I was a well-behaved kid. Being the youngest of 8, my mother usually favored me over my brother Michael because she had 3 sons, and her 2 youngest sons gave her the least amount of trouble. Yours truly in particular. So she knew my soft spot was music because she was the one that got me into rock and roll at an early age. And she buys me Brothers in Arms, and the album cover was just so iconic with a guitar on it. I was just like, Money for Nothing I was digging. I didn't know that the song was going to be long on the album. Boy, was I proven wrong, thank goodness. And that same trip, she bought me Pieces of 8 from Styx. And there's a strange twist of fate there. Dire Straits actually opened for Styx during the Grand Illusion Tour in 1978, towards the end of that touring cycle, because Dire Straits had just, got their earliest gig opening for Styx. I mean, going to see the band doing Come Sail Away and the Grand Illusion when that album was huge, and to see these 4 guys just in jeans and t-shirts opening, you're like, what the hell is this? Thankfully, Dire Straits proved to be a great band, and this album proved to be, and Brothers in Arms proved to be a classic. And thank you to Dennis DeYoung for actually sharing that bit of info, which listening to his podcast that he mentioned that Dire Straits opened for Styx in Europe for a number of shows in '78, before the first album came out. That's amazing. But yeah, I got Pieces of Eight and Brothers in Arms simultaneously, and they were my soundtrack to my summer of 1985. As a 9-year-old kid, listening to Styx, Pink Floyd, Dire Straits, the Rolling Stones, Ozzy Osbourne, Def Leppard, the Eagles, Bob Seger, Joe Walsh, AC/DC, all that good shit, Ozzy Osbourne, like I said, Van Halen, not Van Hagar, but Van Halen. It was a great time to be a kid. Being a child of the 1980s, this album, Brothers in Arms, was my intro to Dire Straits, and I became a fan of the band over the years and then wound up discovering some of their other albums, although it took me a number of years to do so because I was expanding my musical palette after Brothers in Arms, but my God, this album still holds a great place in my heart. And then for years, I was used to the cassette and CD version. That was until I saw that, and it said on this cassette, some of the songs were longer than the vinyl counterpart. And it turns out that 4 of the songs in the album are longer than the vinyl record counterpart. That is an interesting tidbit, because I didn't hear the vinyl edits until 2007 when I was helping out at Sounds Good Music in Port St. Lucie, Florida, where I finally played the vinyl version. And I was like, sheesh. They cut out, I'm used to hearing the full epic, the full long versions of 4 of these tracks, but I had to remember time constraints of the vinyl record. But you had to do what you had to do. And the album Brothers in Arms, from the opening track to the last song, epic. Pure epicness. And I think I'll talk about this epic album right this second. We begin with the song So Far Away, this great pop rock ditty, which was the first single from the album in the UK. But it was the first single from the album, it was actually the third single from the album here in the States. Because another song, being Walk of Life, was the first single here in America. But at first it didn't do anything until it's re-released later in the year. But So Far Away, a great opening song. Here I am again in this mean old town, and you're so far away from me. Now where are you when the sun go down? You're so far away from me. You're so far away from me. You're so far I just can't see. With Mark Knopfler singing brilliantly in that baritone voice of his, with John Illsley and Guy Fletcher singing the higher harmonies. Because Mark Knopfler could not sing in a high octave. I mean, he was no Frankie Valli. He was no Barry Gibb. He even admits he's, basically in a baritone, a deep singing voice like this. So he sings in that register. You're so far away from me. You're so far I just can't see. I'm tired of being all alone, and you're so far away from me. And one of the lyrics came from a conversation he had with his wife. The verse, you've been in the sun and I've been in the rain. And he said that to his wife, and then she goes, no, it's the other way around. You were in the sun and I've been in the rain, because he was off in exotic locales touring and she was stuck in England where it rained. But that line stuck with him, and he inserted it into the lyric of the song, which, upon its initial release, when the album came out, the song climbed into the top 30 on the album rock track chart, and then when it was released as the third single from the album in early '86 here in the States, it went to number 3 on the pop contemporary chart, adult, or what used to be called easy listening, but the hot adult contemporary tracks chart, and it was a top 20 hit, being their fourth and final top 40 single that Dire Straits would have in America, where it peaked at number 19 on the Billboard Hot 100. And the version that was used in the video and the single mix was the version that appeared on the vinyl record at 4 minutes. And a promotional video was of the band rehearsing with skylines of New York and then rehearsing for the Brothers in Arms tour. I thought the video was filmed in early '86, but I think I was wrong. But who knows? But the version that's on the album, on the cassette and CD, that everyone knows and loves, clocks in a whopping 5 minutes and 12 seconds. And the short version's good and all, but I prefer the full 5+ minutes in all its glory. And the song did appear on the Sultans of Swing compilation, the LP edit did. And the full version appeared on the Best of Dire Straits and Mark Knopfler compilation, Private Investigations. And this song was played live on the subsequent Brothers in Arms tour. It was played on the European leg in 1985, the first European leg. And then it was played again in 1986 when the tour went to Japan and Australia. And the song was not played in the U.S., on the U.S. leg of the tour, because the song wasn't released as a single at that stage. Of course, that changed several months after the album was released. But So Far Away, a great song. Mark Knopfler's finger-picking guitar style, him using one of his many Schecter Stratocasters that he used in those days, playing brilliantly, done superbly. In fact, he plays all the guitars in the album. Mark Knopfler does all the lead and rhythm guitars because they didn't have a rhythm guitarist at that time. Of course, the guy that a musician I bring up on one of the songs wound up being the rhythm and co-lead guitarist on the Brothers in Arms tour, Jack Sonny, who joined the band. He was an American who joined the band towards the end of the recording of the album and would play mostly rhythm electric guitar, occasional rhythm acoustic guitar, and then on one song he would play lead guitar. I'll talk about that as I talk about the tour. But So Far Away, great opening song to an amazing album. And now we come to the song that the band's notorious for. I Want My MTV, aka Money for Nothing, which begins with a drone of synthesizers and Sting, formerly of the Police, singing the melody of Don't Stand So Close to Me as I Want My MTV as the synthesizers build in. Pure Pink Floyd epic-like type of synthesizer stuff, like Shine On You Crazy Diamond on steroids with the synthesizers, all done by Guy Fletcher, and Alan Clark doing some synthesizers, but it's mostly Guy Fletcher doing the synthesizer stuff. And on the single mix, the intro is short, but on the album, it's long. It builds up for like a minute and so forth, and then Terry Williams does the batshit drum solo, which just goes completely insane. And then Mark Knopfler, just playing his Gibson Les Paul through one of his amplifiers, just finger-picked his Gibson Les Paul through an amplifier with that distorted sort of... And he was influenced by the king of the Texas blues guitarists, not named Stevie Ray Vaughan, Billy Gibbons of ZZ Top, Reverend Willie G. And the song was a sardonic view about MTV. And Mark Knopfler was in New York at an appliance store, and he saw one of the workers there, and they had a wall of TVs which were all tuned to MTV. And he said the appliance worker was wearing a ball cap, work boots, shirt, and jeans, standing watching videos, and was saying all those lyrics. Look at them yo-yos. That's the way you do it. he wrote those lyrics down. As the guy was ranting and raving, Mark Knopfler went in the back, wrote those lyrics down, and then he also had in mind while he was writing the lyrics how MTV was becoming a powerful tool for kids. Even 9-year-olds like me were into MTV big time. And of course, for the video, which Mark Knopfler was sort of coerced to do the video, especially with the computer animated by 1985 standards, with the guy being sucked into the TV, kind of like a Steven Spielberg sort of thing, like in Poltergeist, the kid being pulled through the TV, and sort of like a Peter Pan sort of thing. The song is just so catchy. I don't care how many times I've heard it over the years, but it's got to be the album version or the uncensored version. Look at them yo-yos, that's the way you do it. Your money for nothing, your chicks for free. Maybe you get a blister on your little finger, a blister on your thumb from the guitar playing. And of course, we got to install microwave ovens, custom kitchen deliveries. We got to move these refrigerators. We got to move these color TVs. And then the second verse is where these days you would be frowned upon and banned for singing. The quote about the little faggot with the earring and the makeup. Yeah, buddy, that's his own hair. The little faggot got his own jet airplane. The little faggot, he's a millionaire. Oh boy, I fucking laugh my ass off every time I hear that. Now we come to the verse with the quote about the little faggot with the earring and the makeup. Yeah, buddy, that's his own hair. The little faggot got his own jet airplane. The little faggot, he's a millionaire. Man, oh man, oh man. Pure political incorrectness. But back in the 1980s, because I was a child back then, I was 9 years old when this album was first released, that word, which is now seen as derogatory and could get you yanked off of YouTube, it didn't mean what it means now. I mean, you could use that word back then to describe a coward, a wuss, a chicken you-know-what, and all that fun stuff. But nowadays you say that word that rhymes with maggot but begins with an F, YouTube will pull down your video, and or other things. And we weren't talking about the LGBTQ community with that verse. I mean, that verse, I think he was poking fun at more of the glam metal bands. All right? I mean, yeah, he had a bunch of Hungarian dudes miming something, which was gibberish in the video. But I associate that verse with the likes of Motley Crue. Yeah, you're seeing images of the Looks That Kill video here in slow motion. And Rat, the video for Round and Round, Dawkins. Yeah, you could construe those bands. How dare Terrence disrespect glam metal? Yeah, they looked like a bunch of women. They looked like a bunch of hairdressers. Yeah, so when I hear that, I'm like, yep, Mark Knopfler was singing about those buggers. Yeah, and yeah, they were becoming very rich and famous by that point. But back in the 1980s, that word that rhymes with maggot but begins with an F was usually referring to people who were basically either a coward or a pussy, or I can say it, chicken shit. That's what it meant back then. And it was commonly used. Eddie Murphy used that word an awful lot in many of his movies, especially in the scene in 48 Hours where he fought with that redneck in the bar. We don't give an S what your badge says, you N-word. You're a real tough country. All right, I'll say it. You're a real tough country faggot, ain't you? Whack. Yeah, meaning real wannabe tough guy pussy is what Eddie Murphy was referring to. So that word back then didn't mean what it means now. It seems like the LGBTQ community got up in arms, raised a holy stink about that word, and then in later years that verse was excised from versions that appeared on some of the compilation albums, like the Money for Nothing compilation, which was released 3 years after Brothers in Arms, and also the version that appears on the Sultans of Swing compilation. In the video on YouTube, they cut that verse out. I'm like, seriously, dudes? Rewriting history, are we? What the hell? Has society become so sanitized that now we have to say the little punk with the earring and the makeup? It doesn't have the same vibe. I mean, at that point in time, I didn't know really many LGBTQ people in those days when the song was done, but apparently I didn't know there was a derogatory word. I mean, I heard that word uttered all the time, especially when fist fights would go on between two heterosexual males. I'm gonna kick your ass, you effing maggot. Rhymes, but starts with an F. You mother effing, oh my goodness. It's hard to quote. I'm trying not to use that word. I don't want to offend anyone, but those were different times we lived in. I was a child back then, and that word was used like it was normal. Now you say that word, the LGBTQ community gets all pissed off and butthurt about it. Grow a pair, people. Lighten up. Words, if words hurt you, you got sensitive, fragile feelings. Why don't you just grow a pair and say, hey, look, don't be such a soy boy, cowardly chicken shit. Man up and live life. I don't have anything against LGBTQ people, mind you, but them raising a holy stink about that verse on Money for Nothing, something's wrong here. It just really perplexes and bothers me that that verse had to be taken out of every radio airing of that song in the last 15, 20 years or so. Because up until then, I could hear the regular version without the, I would hear the album version pretty much, or the single version, or the video version, which had that verse left intact. Man, oh man, oh man. Has society gone soft? You be the judge. Anyway, back to the song. Even when Dire Straits did this live, Mark Knopfler intentionally changed the word to another word that meant the same thing, queenie, which meant drag queen, glam, a guy that dressed up like a woman, Queenie was a British word for faggots. So when they said queenie or weenie or whatever, it just wouldn't offend the PC crowd. But Mark Knopfler did that second verse in full. And this song, in its album on the CD and the cassette, clocked in at over 8 minutes and 22 seconds. I didn't know this until I got the CD in 98. I was like, the song's 8 minutes and 22 seconds? I knew it was long, but that long? Holy shit. And the vinyl LP edit was a minute shorter because the ending guitar, it fades out during the ending guitar solo, and then the chorus is edited slightly. The final chorus, we're doing the money for nothing, the chicks for free, and Sting singing a falsetto money for nothing while Mark Knopfler warbles money for nothing in a baritone. I am money for nothing, the chicks for free, money for nothing, chicks for free. Ow. Hey. Oh my god. Just a great song. And, it's just the song had to be cut down, and then the official promotion video and single edit was at 4 minutes and 38 seconds. Now the promo single, which is the version you hear now, and then the censored video you see is at 4 minutes. Unfucking believable. But the song was the song that pushed this album over the top, and it became the first and only Dire Straits song to hit number one on the pop chart here in the States, number one on the Billboard Hot 100 for 3 weeks in late summer, early fall 1985. It was also number one for 3 weeks on the album Rock Tracks chart, which meant rock radio played the living piss out of, and this song was the national anthem for MTV back in the day. Oh my god, I mean, this video was probably one of my all-time favorite videos as a kid. Yeah, fuck Michael Jackson's Thriller. That video was fucking self-indulgent. Money for Nothing was fucking creative. No fucking scary monster movie bullshit. No evil-looking roboto. No fucking Wolfman, werewolf. Just, computer animation, a guy mocking a bunch of crap in animated form. And the video was done by Steve Barron, the same man that shot a lot of classic 80s videos, including Take On Me by the two-hit wonder Aha. And this video and the song won 2 video music awards back in 1986. And the song won a Grammy for best rock performance by a duo or group. It was nominated for Record of the Year and Song of the Year, but lost. I think it lost to Phil Collins and No Jacket Required or something. I forgot what it lost to, but we know that No Jacket Required by Phil Collins won Album of the Year for Grammy at the Grammy Awards, but so be it. And this song was played every night on the Brothers in Arms tour in pretty much the 7-8 minute glory with the intro, Terry Williams' batshit drums, and for the first part of the tour, Mark Knopfler used the Gibson Les Paul on the track. But for the latter part of the tour, especially the North American leg, Mark Knopfler had to use a Steinberger, as did guitarist Jack Sonny. They were using matching Steinbergers. Those guitars without the tuning pegs on the neck. And they were actually at the bottom of the guitar, the tuning pegs. And the song was played before Wild West End on the Brothers in Arms tour, because they would go back to the first album for Wild West End after the song ended, and Mark Knopfler would play that on the National Steel Acoustic, and Jack Sonny did the guitar solo to give Mark Knopfler a well-deserved rest from guitar soloing all night. But Money for Nothing, great song. I don't get tired of it, especially its album, the long version. And thank goodness Warner Brothers Records told Mark Knopfler to go with the video, because it became the national anthem for music television. Those of us who grew up in that were teenagers of the 80s, or even kids of the 80s, I was a child of the 80s. I was born in 76, so I remember this. I would sit and watch MTV like it was a religion. It was like going to church. Sometimes you'd have to stomach through some Madonna and Prince to get some good shit like Dire Straits or Styx or Rush or Pink Floyd or Queen or Iron Maiden, whatever. You had to stomach through a lot of shit to get to the goods. But believe me, it was like listening to freeform radio back in the day. Nowadays, you playing some of that stuff side by side, you'd be like, what? But that's sadly how things have devolved in this current politically correct world we live in. But Money for Nothing, great song despite the controversy. And I say, if you listen to it, listen to the uncensored version, because if you listen to the edited version, you'll be kowtowing to the Beijing biding my time, long-legged Mac Daddy Obama bullshit of don't want to offend people. Grow up. Money for Nothing rules. God bless Mark Knopfler. Oh my God. Maybe I shouldn't have gone on a political tirade here, but hey, it's how I feel. Now we come to the third song on the album, and the song that was the first first single from the album from Brothers in Arms here in the States, Walk of Life. And it was I think it was the second or third single from the album in the UK, or the fourth single from the album in the UK. But this song was released as the first thing in America back in May of '85, but it really didn't go anywhere. So then they re-released the song as a single in the fall of '85, and it turned into the band's third top 10 hit, peaking at number 7. And the song was the only other track to feature Terry Williams on drums, as he played the drums in this track, playing it brilliantly because it's a rock and roll tune. And it was Alan Clark on keyboards and Guy Fletcher playing that 1960s organ stuff on synthesizer. As he was going do-do, do-do-do, and it was Mark Knopfler's idea because he missed, hearing the songs with organs like the Vox organ, the things that the Doors used on Light My Fire, Break On Through, the Animals on the House of the Rising Sun, Question Mark and the Mysterians, 96 Tears, that sort of thing. And Mark Knopfler wanted to combine that with a rockabilly sort of thing. Yeah, a genre of music that Fraudzilla hated. And basically talks about a singer playing in a busking for money, playing a guitar, which is what the British video, the first video for the song was actually the first thing people saw of it. Was the guy in the tunnel busking for money, playing his acoustic guitar to a simple rock and roll rhythm. Down in the tunnels trying to make it pay, referencing to busking in the subway stations in England and around the world. And the songs he plays are oldies, goldies, like Be-Bop-Bo, Lula Baby, What I Say, Here Comes Johnny singing I Got a Woman, or My Sweet Lovin' Woman, or Mac the Knife, and also playing the Talkin' Blues, Hand Me Now My Walkin' Shoes, Here Come Johnny with the Power and the Glory beat. He got the action, he got the motion, and then you saw in the British video, people miming, oh yeah, the boy can play the Silly Walkers and Monty Python. Oh my god. And the performance of the band in that video was shot in Israel, while the band played there in April of '85, and the performance bits were done in London. Around the time of the release of the album, because like I said, this was the first thing released from the album here in the States, but it really didn't do anything until its re-release later in the year after Money for Nothing exploded. But the song is catchy, hooky, and it's the only song on side one that was not edited down. This was the only song on side one of the album that was not edited for time constraints. But a great song it is, and the band played this live on every show for the Brothers in Arms tour, as well as the following tour in support of On Every Street, like they did Money for Nothing. And then the second video, when the song was released as a single here in the States, the band shot a new video midway through their North American tour, because it was filmed in a sports arena, and it interspersed footage of sports bloopers from basketball, football, and baseball. Baseball players colliding, runners getting tagged out and tumbling, basketball players going into the crowd, football players getting sacked or missing the ball. But then, of course, towards the end of the clip, you would see, I think there was like two Red Sox outfielders colliding, and one of them actually caught the ball. And then you see the football player celebrating, the basketball player, celebrating with hoops and stuff. Oh my god. And in the video, the US version of the video, you see Jack Sonny playing an Ovation acoustic guitar, whereas in live versions, he played pretty much electric guitar live. He wouldn't play acoustic live on the song until the 1986 leg of the tour, which then would be extended for band intros because it would drop Tunnel of Love. But this song is amazing. Like the previous two tracks, it's also on the Sultans of Swing Best Of, and it was also on the Money for Nothing Best Of, too. So this song has been held in high regard by the Dire Straits camp, and people in general, and like I said, the song still holds a lot of great memories for me even today, 35 years after it was initially recorded. Walk of Life, great song, was a rock radio hit, peaking at number 6 in the Billboard album Rock Tracks chart, and it peaked at number 7 on the Pop Hot 100. It would be Dire Straits' last U.S. top 10 hit, because subsequent Dire Straits songs, none of the songs on Every Street would hit the top 100. I mean, they would hit the album Rock Tracks chart, but pop rock radio, forget it. Anyway, Walk of Life, great song, Not much more I can add. But now we get to a jazz rock ditty called Your Latest Trick, which on the CD and the cassette version of the album, it begins with a 1-minute intro on trumpet played by Randy Brecker. Sounds like you're in a jazz club or you're walking in the rain, depressed and sulked over a heartbreak or whatever, and you're like, and that trumpet always hits me every time. It's like very solemn. Oh my God. I mean, to my former colleague who didn't like instruments you blow into, God, you don't like trumpets, you don't like jazz. I keep forgetting. You're stuck on metal, for goodness sake. You know, I shouldn't make disrespect the dude that launched my career. But he's malinformed about instruments you blow into. But horns aren't a bad thing. Randy Brecker, one of the greatest jazz musicians in the history of mankind, and him playing it as Mark Knopfler was playing his guitar solo, just going boo doo 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 doo. And he was actually in the band called, he was actually in Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And he actually played the trumpet on, I believe played the trumpet on Bruce Springsteen's Born to Run, if I'm not mistaken, on Meeting Across the River. Yes, he did play the trumpet on there. And he plays trumpet on the intro, and then his brother, the late Michael Brecker, plays that brilliant saxophone solo, the a saxophone solo riff that's been repeated ad nauseum by many people. And of course, Michael Brecker was no stranger to the rock and roll world, as he had played on Aerosmith's Get Your Wings and did the saxophone solo on Same Old Song and Dance. And what a great saxophonist Michael Brecker was. And his saxophone on this track, and on the vinyl record, it begins with the saxophone part. And the song about the satin bows and their bells, you know, and just a jazzy sort of thing. I don't know how it happened, but I always made it quick. All I can do, and Your Latest Trick. Just this jazzy sort of, you know, talking about a person down his luck in a bar, basically, from what I'm getting out of the lyrics. And this song was released as a single in the band's native England, but it was not released as a single here in the United States, because I think Warner Brothers didn't see the point of releasing a fourth or fifth single from the album. Actually, they did release 4 singles, but a 5th single, they would have overkilled, they didn't want to overkill Dire Straits. But that's alright, because the song was not played on the Brothers in Arms tour until the Japanese and Australian legs of 1986. So the song was not played live until 1986, when the song was released as a single in Europe and other parts of the world. But this song, amazing. And then a live version was released as a single, which appeared on the On the Night album, which was a live album from the On Every Street tour. And this song, like I said, just a beautiful song. Michael Brecker's saxophone work on it, amazing. Very simplistic playing by John Illsley and Guy Fletcher. And Mark Knopfler using some jazzy guitar fills and singing it in that baritone of his. Not much backstory on this song, but a great song it is. I mean, this song was edited down on the original album, on the vinyl record, to, if I'm not mistaken here, the original vinyl record was at 4 minutes and 46 seconds. On the CD and the cassette, the song was 2 minutes longer. It had the trumpet intro, and then the outro, the saxophone fades away, and it's just the drums, the bass, and the keyboards just going for the last minute. So on the vinyl, it trims out the extended ending, and it cuts out the beginning, but that's okay, because either version, great. And not much more to add to Your Latest Trick, but a great song. Now we come to the side one closer called Why Worry? A brilliant, brilliant song this is. And written by Mark Knopfler, sung by Mark Knopfler, basically saying, why worry about all the negatives in the world? And it's just keyboards and guitar on this track for the first part of the song, with the synthesizers played by Guy Fletcher and Alan Clark. And the chorus, I always hear the chorus in my head. Why worry? There should be laughter after pain. There should be sunshine after rain. These things have always remained the same, so why worry now? And John Illsley is on this track, albeit in backing vocal form, because he does not play the bass guitar on this track. It's actually Tony Levin playing Chapman's stick on this track. They said he played on another song, but it was actually this track where you hear Tony Levin's influence of bass playing, where he's using the Chapman stick on this track. John Illsley sings backing vocals with Mark Knopfler. And this song was played every night on the Brothers in Arms tour, but they dropped the key down from E to D. But in the key of D it worked brilliantly as well, and the song in its live setting was down to just 4 minutes. But the song is just basically saying everything's going to be alright, nothing to worry about. Things will get better. Why worry about tomorrow? Or why worry, where tomorrow may not come? And that's a lesson I wish a lot of people would learn, is that just live for today. Live for the moment, because tomorrow, it could be all over tomorrow. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. Yesterday's gone. All you got is here and now. And most people sometimes live life too fast and wind up dying before their time. But my God, the song "Why Worry" is amazing. And on the vinyl record, the song clocked in at almost 5.5 minutes. On the CD and the cassette, the song clocks in at 8.5 minutes, because the song fades out as the keyboards are going. It's droning in B, and Mark Knopfler doing some guitar fills, and then the keyboards, and then you're hearing the fretless bass and Chapman stick of Tony Levin, and Omar Hakim's drums come in for the last few minutes of the song on the cassette and CD to give the song the big payoff, which on the vinyl record you're missing. That was one of the advantages of having the cassette back in the day and the CD, is you get to hear the song in its full thing. And then the vinyl record, you had the edits, which worked very well. And this song, like I said, was played live on every show of the Brothers in Arms tour. And not much more to add, but my God, great song. Why Worry is. Now you flip the motherfucker to side 2 of the album, and we begin with the first of 3 songs on the side to discuss militarism, Ride Across the River, which begins with synthesizer stuff sounding like you're in the jungles of Africa, going boom, 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 dun, dun. And it has one of Mark Knopfler's most brilliant guitar solos, where he's just soloing his ass off on the Stratocaster. Gonna Ride Across the River, Deep and Wide. And again, it features Randy Brecker on trumpet on this track, and playing the mariachi-type trumpet, and the reggae-influenced drum part of Omar Hakim, which is very simple on the studio version. Gonna Ride Across the River, to the other side. I'm a soldier of freedom. We are the chosen. Gonna Ride. It's just an amazing song, especially if you're listening to the album version. Like I said, the song, an amazing piece. And as I grab the record here to read some of the lyrics here, because most people will be thinking I'm talking out of my asshole, which I'm not. Oh shit! As I drop this thing, I'm live here. I'm a soldier of freedom in the army of man. We are the chosen. We are the partisan. The cause is noble and the cause is just. We are ready to pay out with our lives if we must. I'm a soldier of fortune, I'm a dog of war, and we don't give a damn what the killing is for. It's the same old story with a different name. Death or glory, it's the killing game. And then that epic guitar solo from Mark Knopfler. Nothing's going to stop them as the day follows the night. Right becomes wrong and the left becomes the right. God bless Mark Knopfler for writing that stuff. And they sing as they march with their flags unfurled. Today in the mountains, tomorrow the world, gonna ride across the river deep and ride right across the river to the other side. And this song, in its normal version, clocked in at 6 minutes and 58 seconds on the LP and the CD and the cassette. The song was played live as the opening song, on the Brothers in Arms tour. And Terry Williams' drumming track to this was a lot different than Omar Hakim's, because Terry Williams played the drums more like reggae meets hard rock. Especially when he used those concert toms in the live versions, which Dire Straits began all the shows on the Brothers in Arms tour with this song. It would be the first song that they would play in the show. And the synthesized pan flute was, I think, an EMU emulator doing that on the synthesizer. And that thing would be used by, that pan flute synthesizer type thing would be then used later on things like Sledgehammer by Peter Gabriel, released a year later. Roger Waters would use it on Me or Him on his Radio Chaos album. And Rush used it on the song that they did not like, that they released, called Tai Shan, on the album Hold Your Fire, a song that I love. Sorry if the guys in Rush didn't like that tune, but I think it's a catchy fucking ditty. As I do think the song Right Across the River. The song was played live every night on the Brothers in Arms tour. The band just... And the song would be like 11 or 12 minutes long in the live setting, because they had to create the atmosphere as the song built in. And Chris White, who joined the tour as saxophonist and flautist, played flute and saxophone. The saxophone replacing the trumpet, a soprano saxophone, the same saxophone that made Kenny G famous. Mark Knopfler just using his guitar for the guitar solos, because Jack Sonny did the rhythm guitar in the live setting. Of course, Terry Williams just playing the drums like... And then sometimes it accented with electronic pads. But then during the To the Other Side, he did those crazy fills on that epic-sized Ludwig drum kit with the Paiste cymbals he had. And then, of course, the song ended with a gong hit, and then would just segue via electronic drums into Espresso Love from the Making Movies album in live performances on the said tour for Brothers in Arms. But Right Across the River, great song, not much more to add. Now we come to the next song, which is Mark Knopfler playing brilliant acoustic guitar called The Man's Too Strong. And the first verse is in, it has no effects on it. I'm just an aging drummer boy in the wars I've used to play, and I've called the tune of many a tortured session. They say I'm a war criminal, and I'm fading away. Father, please hear my confession. And then you hear that National steel guitar played as a dobro, as an overdub, is Mark Knopfler strumming on an Ovation acoustic guitar as the main impetus for the song. And then the rest of the song, his voice is drenched in flames. I have legalized robbery, called it belief. I have run with the money and hid like a thief. I have rewritten history with my armies and my crooks, invented memories. I did burn all the books. I could still hear his laughter. I could still hear his song, The Man's Too Big, The Man's Too Strong. And Jack Sonny does play guitar synthesizer on this track. In the live version, which they did only on the first European leg of the Brothers in Arms tour, which they then dropped before they played America, he just played regular rhythm electric guitars. Guy Fletcher did all that synthesizer stuff on synthesizers with a guy with Alan Clark on piano. And studio version I like, but live it was much better. And you can thank Terry Williams because he actually added a drum part, which wasn't on the studio track, which went ba ba bum 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 ba bum ba da 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 boom ba ba bum ba. Because that was what I was always hearing. Is I'm like, there should have been drums on this track. Thankfully, in the live version, there was. Terry Williams, God bless him. And then do 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 bum. Those classic Simmons pads. He was a fucking barnstormer on the drums. Yeah, that's what the live version was. And Mark Knopfler's voice was not drenched in any effects in the live version. And the next verse, I tried to be meek and I tried to be wild. I spat like a woman, sulked like a child, lived behind walls that have made me alone, striving for peace, which I never have known. And then I repeated the chorus. And while the sun rose on the courtyard, and they all did hear him say, "You always were a Judas, but I got you anyway. You may got you silver, but I swear upon my life, your sister gave me diamonds, and I gave them to your wife. Oh, Father, please help me, for I have done wrong. The man's too big, the man's too strong." And the song depicted the character of an ancient soldier or a war criminal, and his fear of showing feelings as weakness. And it was written as sort of a protest song, but my God. The studio version I always enjoyed as a kid. I still enjoy it today, but since I've heard the live version from Wembley Arena, which is readily available on bootleg, they should release a live album of that tour with the best performances from all the shows. Terry Williams' drumming sort of made the song come even more alive, and Jack Sonny adding rhythm electric guitar on that Fender Stratocaster going gung gang gang gang, very clean sounding, as Mark Knopfler using a pick on an acoustic guitar. Very rarely you saw him use a pick. And John Illsley playing the bass guitar brilliantly and doing a great job on it. Not much more to add to the song "The Man's Too Strong," but a great song "The Man's Too Strong" is. Now we come to the penultimate song in the album, "One World," which was written by Mark Knopfler, and it featured Neil Jason on bass guitar on this one. And you hear the slap bass, which Neil Jason was notorious for, and through a phasing effect, which he was notorious for using. And of course, most Kiss fans know Neil Jason for his work on Gene Simmons' solo album in 1978. And this up-tempo rocker, which was a rock radio hit, got boatloads of album rock radio play back in '85, has Mark Knopfler's voice singing in a distorted flange. Can't get no sleeves for my records, can't get no laces for my shoes, can't get no fancy notes on my blue guitar, can't get no antidote for blues. What a great rockin' tune this is. Omar Hakim's drumming is excellent. And like I said, the song is just catchy. Can't find no reasons for your actions. Or I don't much like the reasoning you use. Somehow your motives are impure, or somehow I can't find the cure. Can't find no antidote for blues. And then it breaks down into the bridge section. They say it's mostly vanity that writes the plays we act. They tell me that's what everybody knows. There's no such thing as sanity, and that's the sanest fact. That's the way the story goes. And then the final verse, can't get no remedy on my TV, or can't get no something on my TV in the live version. There's nothing but the same old news. Can't find a way to be one world in harmony. Can't get no antidote for blues. Mark Knopfler's guitar solos on the Stratocaster on this track, amazing. Although in the live versions, which this song was played on every show of the North American leg of the tour, and then the second European leg of the tour after America was conquered. The live version's slightly different because it would begin with the keyboard melody from the bridge section and then go right into the song, played in a hard rock fashion. Terry Williams sort of adding more of a an aggressive drum track compared to Omar Hakim's version on the album. And Mark Knopfler's voice not added with any effects at all, just sung normal. And Mark Knopfler just soloing his ass off. And Chris White doing some flute stuff. And then at the end of the song, the band's just rocking out and playing the song. And then instead of ending the song normal, they had to create a link to go into Romeo and Juliet. So they created this sort of da-da-dun, that link into Romeo and Juliet, which they started on So Far Away, then they used it at the end of One World on the US leg, sort of was a perfect way to go from hard rock to something more serious with the next songs. They had to create a suspenseful sort of thing, which Terry Williams doing those drum fills on the live versions were amazing. His drumming was more energetic than Omar Hakim, although Omar Hakim's drumming on the album was great. Terry Williams was the fucking definitive drummer for Dire Straits. And the song was apparently a top 10 album rock track hit. It'll say the position of the song on the screen. But One World, amazing song. Not much more to add to the song, but a great penultimate track, and it's the shortest song in the album at 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Now we end the album with the 7-minute title cut to Brothers in Arms. And this song in the key of A minor flat, A flat minor. It begins with a droning chord of C sharp minor, droning in with synthesizers, and Mark Knopfler playing that brilliant, guitar solo on that Gibson Les Paul, and just amazing. And the song was written during the Falklands War and is described as some as an anti-war song, although it curates the experience of soldiers in wartime and their need for solidarity, which in the final verse includes their brothers on the other side of the trenches. The wartime motif is rather underwritten, but offered more as a natural backdrop. These mist-covered mountains are all home for me, but my home is the lowlands and always will be. Someday you will return to your valleys and your farms, and you will not be burned. You will. Let me grab the record here so I can read the fucking lyrics. Here it says, "And you'll no longer burn to be brothers in arms." And then another amazing little short guitar solo. And then the second verse, through these fields of and then increasingly marked by destruction, these fields of destruction, baptisms of fire, I've watched all your suffering, or in other live versions, I've witnessed your suffering, and all the battles raged higher, and though they did hurt me so bad, in the fear and alarm, you did not desert me, my brothers in arms. And then the bridge, there's so many different worlds, so many different suns, and we have just one world, but we live in different ones. Ain't that the truth? And Mark Knopfler does an amazing second guitar solo here, right before the final verse about death. Now the sun's gone to hell, and the moon riding high, let me bid you farewell, every man has to die. But it's written in the starlight, and every line on your palm, we're fools to make war on our brothers in arms. Into that epic final guitar solo. Just amazing guitar solo. And this was the fourth video from the album that was shown. It was shown on MTV here in the States as the fourth and final video from the album, although it was released as a single in the UK in October of '85 as the third single from the album. And the video was pretty much animated, and it had a very classic appearance in noisy black and white images, and used rotoscoping, show the band performing with images of war. And the song, the And there's like several different versions of it. The one that appears on Brothers in Arms is at 7 minutes, and then the shorter version featured slightly different and shorter solos at the beginning and end of the song. And the version that appears on the Greatest Hits album of Dire Straits' Greatest Hits albums, Brothers and Sultans of Swing, and Money for Nothing, used the 4-minute 55-second version, which is almost 5 minutes. And this song was played live on the Brothers in Arms tour, with Mark Knopfler using the Gibson Les Paul in the performance, every performance. And this was the last song. This was actually the first song in the encore. This was the first encore on the Brothers in Arms tour. And the drums on the studio version were just very subtle, just rim shots played by Omar Hakim. But in the live setting on the subsequent Brothers in Arms tour, Terry Williams sort of kicked the drums into overdrive, doing the boom, bop, actually adding a proper drum part instead of using a rim shot at the end. He just was hitting the snare and then hitting the crashes, doing some over-the-top drumming. And the ending of the song for much of the tour had that big finish, the dun dun do 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 do, the drum fill, and then a dun dun do 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 do, dun, that holding the F sharp chord for a bit as Terry Williams did that drum fill, and then ending, boom, and then Mark Knopfler going, "Thank you, we love you, good night." Ending with that A flat minor chord as the band just goes completely ape, and ending with the thunder. When they did it on the live versions on the Night, on the On Every Street tour in '92, it had a pedal steel guitar in it, which kind of made it more country sounding. And the ending was a little more subdued and melancholic, fading, and just sort of no energy. Compared to the live versions I've heard from '85, where, Wembley Arena, for instance, San Antonio, Houston, Cleveland, with the big fucking finish. The with the Terry Williams' batshit drumming. My God. I mean, I know Neil Dorfman was trying to create something great, but Terry Williams was just a beast on that drum kit, especially that Ludwig drum kit with the Paiste cymbals. And the live version they did in '88 wasn't bad either, with Eric Clapton. But Brothers in Arms, the title track to this masterpiece, perfect way to finish the album. And what an album it turned out to be. And it's, I think, one of the best Patriot songs I've heard in the entire history of life, in my life. And Mark Knopfler, I think re-recorded the song later with a, for a charity thing, and it worked, very, very brilliantly. And the video won a Grammy Award for Best Music Video. And although the song wasn't a big hit here in the States, it did hit the UK Top 20, although it did not chart as a single here in the States. But again, who gives a fuck if it was a big hit or not? The song fucking ruled, in my estimation. Brothers in Arms, upon its release in May of 1985, went to number 1 in the UK for a total of 14 non-consecutive weeks. And then here in the States, it went all the way to number 1 as well for 9 straight weeks. It was number 1 for 9 weeks in a row between the end of August through much of October 1985. That is amazing. And the album went platinum almost immediately. It was also the 27th best-selling album on Billboard for 1985, and it was the number 5 album on Billboard for the year of 1986. And the album to date has sold 30 million copies worldwide, including a staggering 9 million copies here in just the United States alone, making it the biggest-selling Dire Straits album ever. It outsold the debut, which is the second best-selling album of theirs, It outsold Making Movies, which is their third highest selling album in America. Then On Every Street is like their fourth highest seller, Communique and Love Over Gold, although both great albums, didn't really get the attention they deserved. And after this album, Mark Knopfler walked away from Dire Straits for a while, and they released a greatest hits album called Money for Nothing in 1988, which had some remixes and some different edits of songs. An edit of Brothers in Arms at 4 minutes 49 seconds. The 4-minute edit of Money for Nothing and Walk of Life appeared on it, and some songs were remixed for the compilation album. And that too did very well. It actually that greatest hits album went platinum here in the States, Money for Nothing. And then they would re-emerge in 1991 with the decent On Every Street. It wasn't a bad album, but it was not the best album either that they did. But it was a somewhat different album for the band, because by then Mark Knopfler wanted to do different things and just stick with the Dire Straits formula. Because after the Brothers in Arms tour, when the band broke up for a bit, Jack Sonny went off and did his own thing, and then Terry Williams wound up leaving the band, I think, after the Nelson Mandela concert in 1988. So the Brothers in Arms album and tour have proved to be the perfect epitaph for the band's history, and the band, and Mark Knopfler in particular, still remain proud of this album. And the album won quite a few Grammy Awards, and then it was nominated for another Grammy in 2005, winning Best Surround Sound Recording. And it is one of the best surround sound recordings, because I have the Hybrid SA CD, which sounds amazing. And the 20th anniversary of Brothers in Arms was released as a surround sound mix on Hybrid SA CD or dual disc, depending on where you lived in the world. But my God, does Brothers in Arms is still held up all these years later, as I read this thing. The tour for Brothers in Arms actually lasted for over a year. It started on the 25th of April, 1985, and it ended in Sydney, Australia on the 26th of April, 1986. So it started in Yugoslavia, then they played Israel, Greece, Switzerland, Yugoslavia, Austria, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, the Netherlands, Belgium, France, Spain, Luxembourg, and a whopping 12 or so nights at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 nights at Wembley Arena in London. That is mind-boggling, and that record has not ever been broken. They set the record for most performances for the Brothers in Arms tour, and then they played Canada and the United States, playing predominantly arenas, and and one of the opening acts for part of the tour was Stevie Ray Vaughan. At the time, in the midst of his cocaine and alcohol addiction, he was the opening act in Toronto, in Canada. And for the rest of the U.S. leg, I have no clue who opened up the rest of the U.S. leg, but it balanced out between theaters and sports arenas. And in some cities, they played both the arenas and stadium. Arenas and theaters. Like New York City, they played Radio City Music Hall. In Boston, they played the Wank Center. And then they would also play the Boston Garden. The only time Dire Straits got to play the old Garden was October 1985, a few weeks after Hurricane Gloria ravaged through here. And they played their first ever gig at Madison Square Garden, and their first ever gig at Nassau Coliseum as well. So those who didn't get a chance to see him at Radio City Music Hall got to see him either on Long Island or at Madison Square Garden proper, and also the Meadowlands. And then they went back to Europe again to do even more shows, and then toured Australia in February of 86. And the set list was just, they played much of the album on the tour. The only song that they did not play, actually they played the whole album throughout the touring cycle of the album. Like I said, the songs as the studio album stands are great, but live they were sort of given an extra kick in the pants. And Brothers in Arms, over the years, like I said, won several Grammy Awards upon its release, and then for the album was won a Best Engineered Grammy for Best Engineered Album for Neil Dwarfsman. And it was nominated for Album of the Year, but it lost to Phil Collins' No Jacket Required. A Phil Collins album I like, but it's not my favorite. I actually prefer Face Value and Hell I Must Be Going to that album because No Jacket Required sounds of the time. You can thank those pesky drum machines. And then the album won another Grammy Award in 2006 for Best Surround Sound Recording, done by Chuck Ainley, mastering by Bob Ludwig, and the surround sound producers Chuck Ainley and Mark Knopfler. God bless Dire Straits for this, and this album is still, to this day, if you don't know where to begin with Dire Straits and you don't want to buy a greatest hits album, I urge you to start with Brothers in Arms, because believe me, you folks, once you hear this album, you definitely want to go back and check out the rest of their catalog, because they put out a lot of great shit over the years. And like I said, the best way to appreciate Dire Straits is with all their studio albums. And the album, to this day, one of the best-selling, not because of chart success, but the nature of the recording. And of course, it began the barrage of rock albums being recorded digital during the latter part of the 80s. Rush recording Power Windows, digital being their first digital recording. Queen with A Kind of Magic in 86. Pink Floyd with A Momentary Lapse of Reason, which was predominantly digital except for the rhythm section, which were analog. But my God, recording, Brothers in Arms is still, was the benchmark for many rock albums with great sound. And I'm glad I finally got to do an episode on this album. Now in time for Dire Straits' Brothers in Arms 40th anniversary, I figured I'd bring you an update that a brand new 3 CD and or 5 LP set of this album has been re-released. So you have the 1996 remaster done by Bob Ludwig on CD1, or the first 2 LPs, LP1 and LP2, to have the full album, the full versions of those songs, which were on the original vinyl record. So Far Away, Money for Nothing, Your Latest Trick, and Why Worry were trimmed down for time constraints of the vinyl record. Now you get the full versions, just like the CD and the cassette versions. And then the reason I own it is the 2 CDs that come with it, or 4 LPs the 3 LPs that come with it. A live concert recorded in San Antonio, Texas in August 1985. At the time, the album was at the pinnacle of its success. Number 1 on the Billboard album chart, and selling, which was for like 9 straight weeks in the summer of 85. It was the album of the summer of 85, mind you. And it features 6 songs from the album live, including a killer 10-minute version of Ride Across the River, which kicks everyone right square in the ass. And like I said, the live version is much better than the studio because Terry Williams added those acoustic drums and that Ludwig drum kit with those Peisty cymbals. Hits me every time. That's rock and roll. Ludwig and Peisty. It's like Fender Stratocasters and Hiwatt amplifiers. You can't get any more rock and roll than that. The Ludwig and Peisty combo. Think Bonham. Think Eric Carr, Alex Van Halen, Nick Mason of Pink Floyd for many years. Anyone who used that combo, that was rock and roll. Then you have Ride Across the River in 10 Plus Minute Glory. Espresso Love, which rivals the version on what's that album there? Yeah, on Alchemy. But a great second track. One World Live, which Mark Knopfler uses that Steinberger electric guitar, which he kicks ass on it, and John Illsley playing bass on it, playing actually better than Neil Jason. As far as I'm concerned, I'd rather hear just a simple bass riff than the slaps, which makes it sound of the time, but live it was given a little more timeless quality. And then into that outro that goes dum bum 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 bum, which Terry Williams just played that drum part in the transition into Romeo and Juliet like a boss. Into Romeo and Juliet, brilliant live version, rivals the one on Alchemy, and this time Mark Knopfler plays the outro guitar solo with his Stratocaster. A little different than the version that appeared on Alchemy. Private Investigations rivals the version on Alchemy, and of course the American audience, because this was a live recording from Texas, they clap on the bass guitar note, on the bum, bum. You hear the claps on that, because in the UK, they clap on the offbeat. In America, they clap on the beat. That's the difference between British and American crowds, of course. Sultans of Swing rivals the version on Alchemy. Why Worry? Just guitars and keyboards and backing vocals. Excellent live version. That's CD number 2 and sides 1 through 3 of the 3 LPs. And then CD 2, sides 4 through 6 of the live record is Two Young Lovers, which rivals the live version on Alchemy. Excellent live recording. Money for Nothing live, which, yeah, Terry Williams does that drum intro with 10 times more balls than he did on the studio track. He did great on the studio track, but live he's unleashed, and he plays the drums on the whole damn track, which gives it more of a hard rock feel, and Mark Knopfler playing either the Gibson Les Paul or that Steinberger Headless Steinberger. Something tells me it's the Gibson Les Paul, the Sunburst. And then Wild West End, which Mark Knopfler again pulls out the National Steel acoustic guitar. And that ending guitar solo played by the late Jack Sonny, who just pulls his inner Jimi Hendrix with that left-handed Fender Stratocaster flipped the other way around so a right-handed could play it. Him soloing like no tomorrow on that thing. Just, oh man. Testament to how great of a guitarist that Jack Sonny was. And that live version, oh man. Best live version ever done was on that Brothers in Arms tour. And in fact, and to hear his solo, him just kicking everyone's ass, amazing. Tunnel of Love in all 19-minute glory with band member introductions. And a little teaser of Runaway when keyboard player Alan Clark got introduced. A little homage to the late Del Shannon, who sadly passed away in 1990. A victim of taking his own life from drugs and alcohol. May Del Shannon lay in peace. Brothers in Arms live. Best live version out there, apart from Wembley Arena 85. Terry Williams playing the drums at the end, and then that big finale, that doon doon ba 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 bum ba 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 ba. You know, if you watch the Wembley footage, it's the same the way they ended the song in Wembley Arena, which then, you know, after the reprise of the do doon do 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 do, holding the F sharp chord with the drum roll going brrrr, bum, and then Mark Knopfler goes, "Thank you, San Antone. Thank you. We love you." Into the final A-flat minor chord to end the song, to bring it on home. And that was the first encore. Solid Rock rivals the version on Alchemy. Another great version. And the theme from Going Home to Bring It All on Home. And yeah, and the lineup on that live recording is Mark Knopfler on lead guitars and vocals. except as indicated. John Illsley, bass guitar, backing vocals. Alan Clark, organ, synthesizer, piano. Terry Williams on drums, percussion. Jack Sonny, rhythm and lead guitars, backing vocals. Guy Fletcher, synthesizers. And Chris White on saxophones, flute, and extra percussion. Man, oh man, oh man. That was, the definitive live tour for Dire Straits at the pinnacle of their success. I can see why they didn't put it on the live 1978 to 92 box set, because they were saving it for the Brothers in Arms reissue, which is now in stores in Europe. Or here in the United States, you're going to have to wait a while because the album is on Universal Music outside America. Here in the States, it's on Warner, what's now known as Warner Records. Used to be called Warner Brothers Records. But Rhino Warner Records will reissue it hopefully sometime before the year is out. On CD, on vinyl. I listen to it on streaming, so I'll wait until the CD gets a US release. Because right now, trying to get the import's like almost impossible. But I'll wait for a US release, which should be happening sometime later in the year. We'll keep you posted. But for now, I'm going to do some recommendations, one of which is that said album right there, Brothers in Arms. If you can find the version of that 40th Anniversary Edition right now, I urge you to buy it. I know you can get it in Europe right now, but here in the States, you can get it as an import, because its US release will be not for quite some time. So I recommend that. And sticking with 1985, I'm going to go with the first album from Supertramp after Roger Hodgson flew the coop, Brother Were You Bound. Boy, do I love this album. And it featured their last top 30 hit, Cannonball, which was Rick Davies' song that he wrote in the chord of G minor. And it's G minor for the whole song. Man, oh man, oh man. Still in Love. No In Between, one of the atmospheric ballads. Better Days, which featured sound bites from the presidential candidates of 1984, Ronald Reagan, Walter Mondale, George H.W. Bush, and Geraldine Ferraro. We know who won that election, folks. Reagan by a landslide. He won every state except for Minnesota. And D.C. didn't vote for Reagan either. But every other state, including all those blue states, voted for the great Gipper, that is Reagan. Then, of course, Brother Were You Bound's 16.5-minute title suite, which featured guest appearances by Scott Gorham of Thin Lizzy on rhythm guitar, and the soaring guitar solos of David Gilmour, now formerly of Pink Floyd. I have to keep saying formerly of Pink Floyd now because Pink Floyd is no more. So David Gilmour did the guitar solo at the 6-minute 49-second mark, which lasts for about almost 3 minutes, up until like 8 or 9 minutes into the song. Then he does the ending guitar solo, which brings it all on home. The song is just a masterpiece. If you haven't heard that song, what are you waiting for? I know it's 16.5 minutes long, but Supertramp were making a statement that progressive rock in 1985 was alive and well and still kicking. And of course it ends with the beautiful ballad, Ever Open Door, which is just Rick Davies, his baritone voice, grand piano, and him on synthesizer. So Rick on everything. Piano, synthesizers, and lead vocal. So those are my picks of the moment. And before I go and say goodbye, here are some other YouTube channels, podcasts, radio shows I want you fans to give your love to. Now, can you dig that, suckers? Check out The Rockin' Tours with Guy Pratt and Gary Kemp, both from Nick Mason's Saucerful of Secrets. Also check out Eddie Trunk's podcast. How can anyone not like Eddie Trunk? It's humanly impossible. And of course, the Chris Jericho podcast, Y2J for the Win. And the following YouTube channels: Michael Borland's Classic Rock channels on YouTube, John Bowden's various classic rock YouTube channels. He's awesome. Freeform Rock Podcast with my buddy Mark Alden Taylor. That's recommended as well. The Villain Cult Podcast with Roy Dam, Eric Lawton, and Mike Lockhart. How could anyone not like those guys? Classic Rock Review, that's recommended. The Professor of Rock. Darren Locke, he's recommended. He's funny. He's deadpan British humor, but God bless him. Melinda Murphy's channel's recommended. Brandon Snyder, great YouTuber. Pete Pardo, Sea of Tranquility. The Man, the Myth, the Legend. And my new favorite, JCM Led Zeppelin Stories. Jose is the king of Led Zeppelin, and the man who's got more copies of In Through the Outdoor than any other human being I know in my life. He has about 50 some odd copies of it. And his YouTube channels and his deep dives into Zeppelin things, awesome, awesome, awesome. And if you're not a Zeppelin fan, check out his channel. You'll be very surprised, guaranteed. Then again, he's the same dude who got me into Santana as of late. JCM, I want to thank you for that, brother. And you're more than welcome to come on my show, and you and I definitely will have to do a collaboration one of these days. We'll have to figure out the time and the place. So before I go, here's some recommendations for other podcasts and so forth and so on. I want you fans to give your love to, and to quote General MacArthur, I shall return.
Hi, this is Mark Olden Taylor from the Freeform Rock Podcast, where we rock and roll all night and party every day. Come check us out on iTunes and Podbean. Thank you very much.
Hey everybody, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Chris.
And we're from the Decibel Geek Podcast. And if you love this...
then you'll love us.
That's right. Brand new episode every single Monday. You can find us on iTunes and at decibelgeek.com. And the best thing is, it's rock and roll and it's always free.
Mistress Carey reporting for duty. That's right. After rocking the airwaves in Boston for 22 years on WAAF, welcome to the Mistress Carey Podcast. And if you love rock, this weekly podcast is for you. I'll introduce you to new bands that I think you are going to love, and keep you in touch with the bands that are already your favorites. I'll take you backstage and expose you to the people behind the rock. Plus, we'll talk about everything else that we know and love, like motorcycles, tattoos, skydiving, hot rods, food, booze, and so much more. And let's not forget all of the branches of our military, our veterans, and first responders. Everything you know and loved about the Mistress Carey show, but now I'm unfiltered and uncensored. Fuck yeah! And if you never heard me before, well, welcome to the party. Subscribe now so you don't miss Mistress Carey Podcast.
Please state the nature of the medical emergency.
Brain damage with Pink Floyd.
This stuff can give you brain damage.
Pink Floyd radio show.
Use only as directed.
There is no downside in the moon, really. Matter of fact, it's all necessary.
Your controls are set to the Random Precision Radio Network. This is Freudian Slip, an hour of Pink Floyd. I'm Craig Bailey. Find us online at FreudianSlip.com. Write to us at pink at FreudianSlip.com. Freudian Slip is a Random Precision production.
You're listening to Nights with Alice Cooper. I think my Speedo is starting to cut off the flow of oxygen to my head. And that's why I got so
temperamental with anyone. There is the impertinence to question his wisdom, and hello, hypothesis inner courier.
Hi, and welcome to In the Studio. Redbeard here with the stories behind history's greatest rock and roll albums. Follow In the Studio on Facebook, at Redbeard Rocks on Twitter, and online at inthestudio.net.
Well, my friends, that wraps up another exciting episode of TJR's Classic Rock Corner podcast. I apologize for another From the Vaults episode, but it was just too good to have it sit in the vault and just collect dust. But I'll be back with another brand spanking new episode next, which will be Little River Band's first Under the Wire. Yeah, Then after that will be the Game by Queen updated and revised. I got a Kiss episode I've got to air, which would be Destroyer. So yeah, I'll finally do a Kiss episode. I've had it in my vault sitting for quite some time waiting to be recorded, but the time is now to finally air Kiss Destroyer, especially in light of that album about to turn the golden anniversary next year. Plus some other new episodes, some old but new. Whatever I feel like doing, I will air them as I sees fit. So this is the classic rock brainiac Terrence Reardon, aka TJR, here on TJR's Classic Rock Corner, saying thanks for tuning on in. I love you all. Don't take shit from assholes. I used to say that all the time. And don't let anyone piss you off either. I love you all. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Good night. God bless you. TJR's Classic Rock Corner podcast was written, produced, hosted, so on and so forth by yours truly, the classic rock brainiac, Terrence Reardon. The intro music and the outro music is by the one and only Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin from the Death Wish 2 soundtrack. Copyright 2025 TJR Rock Sponge Incorporated, all rights reserved. Once again, thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Good night, my friends. God bless you.